everybody. This is Janet Belsky, and I'm on to the final episode in the growing up phase of life, part one of my lifespan lecture series. And today we are going to talk about that difficult, terribly difficult time, and also terribly exciting time called becoming adult. And we're going to label that as the terrific, not so terrific 20s and now 30s. Takes a long time. Everybody knows that to become an adult these days. And okay, we're going to look at the challenges of becoming an adult. We're going to look at how becoming an adult has changed, and it's really changed dramatically over three phases. We're going to explore the main problem today for young people, which is loneliness. We're in a loneliness epidemic. And then finally, I'm going to give you my prescriptions for finding love at the beginning of your adult life. True, false? The 20s are the best time of life. Is that true or is that false? The 20s are the worst time of life. It was the best of times and the worst of times. The best time of life, everybody tells you that. In your 20s, go out and conquer the world. You're at the pinnacle of your life. The worst time of life is when we look back to our 20s. Some of us, a surprising percentage of us, are going to feel that was the worst time of my life. I happen to be in that particular category, so I'm really into this. The 20s were the most difficult age of the lifespan that I've had so far, and I'm almost 80. Actually, the answer, though, in general, is they're very exciting, but they're also very scary and stressful. I have my source here, Jeffrey Arnett, who has been studying this topic for 30 years. So then we have share of adults reporting symptoms of anxiety and depressive disorder. And we look at age 18 to 24, 50%. It's higher than any other age group, including 65 and over. So the 20s tend to be a more stressful age than an exciting age. And let us move on to talk about why, because this is the age when we have to completely change who we are from a child to an adult. We have to become a new person. And the person who really articulated that in our field is a man named Erik Erikson. Erikson said, our challenge in our 20s is to find, famous word, that was his word, called identity. We have to decide what kind of person we're going to be during our adult life. And that's complex. It could be things like how committed am I to religion? What career do I want? Who am I as a person? What are my interests? There's a lot of stuff we have to figure out when we're making this transition to adulthood in terms of identity. Now, Erikson felt that in order to have a fulfilling adult life, you have to have somebody to love. And I personally agree with that statement. So we're going to look in this thing at how we get to intimacy in this difficult age that we're going through right now, for young people, that is. Who should I love? Okay, so we have three phases of becoming an adult. And phase one, I'm going to call the rigid rules, clearly mapped out path phase. And that's going to last from about the 1950s to the mid 1960s. Now, I was a child in the 1950s, and I can tell you there were a lot of unbelievably rigid rules. First thing that happened in the 50s was, and I see this with people in my place where I'm living, a lot of these people are in their 90s or late 80s. They typically got married at about 19, and they stayed married their whole lives. And there are certainly a number of divorced people in my place, but most of the people stayed married or widowed. And the four-child family was what you had. Now, here we have that group of people, and most of them, the ones that were 40 in 1976, ended up having four children. People who had one child were very, very much in the minority as opposed to today. So here's my family, lovely upper middle class family, perfect pictures of health, happiness. Leave it to Beaver was what it was, except for one problem, I should say two problems. My mother never wanted to be a housewife. She always wanted to be an artist, but she couldn't really do that at that particular moment in history. She didn't want to be in the kitchen, but she had to. My father hated his job, but it made good money and he could advance in it. So he stayed in his job for his whole career until he was sort of basically retired. So it was a very, very confining environment for you in terms of your identity and, figuring out who exactly you were. Here's some no-nos. Being gay, that was called a fairy. Getting knocked up, that was called having sex with, and getting pregnant, and also having sex was not a good thing, without marrying. Being an old maid, I was caution me, you cannot be single over age 22 or 23, you'll be an old maid and nobody will love you. Divorce, in my neighborhood, we had one or two divorces and we said, they got a divorce, what's wrong with them? Working after entering married life was also not, I would say, a widely accepted thing. If you were rich, if you were poor, you always worked. But if you were relatively affluent, you didn't, and the wife did not have to work. Okay, so now we come to phase two, which is when people my age become adolescents. We are the baby boomers, and I became an adolescent in the 1960s. And it was a very exciting age because we decided that we could do whatever we wanted to do. We're free. We want to live life the way we want. I'm calling it the Liberation Revolution and shedding the rules. Just as a little history, I was living through it in the early 60s. It was very exciting. We had the civil rights movement. We had this book called The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, where she said, women can work. The women should not be housewives. And then in the late 60s, it went crazy. Did my friends get crazy with drugs? Absolutely. We didn't go to Woodstock. That was the epitome of these people are at Woodstock, of free love. But yeah, my friends were, having sex in a way that, God forbid, they should never have had sex, whatever. We had, of course, birth control. That was very important. But it got a little crazy in the late 60s, particularly. But the important thing is that we changed our ideas about women and men. And women were now supposed to be in the workforce. Working women were celebrated. And nurturing dads, to some degree, were celebrated. We have a famous movie called Kramer versus Kramer, where the woman takes off, that was Meryl Streep, and Dustin Hoffman has to raise the kids. Nurturing dads were absolutely celebrated to some degree. I'm not sure if they are completely today. Then we had, interestingly, who would have thunk it, a huge rise in divorce right around the liberation phase. Divorce in the decade from the 60s to the mid 70s escalated tremendously. That's called the divorce revolution. And then of course, the second thing was we had a huge increase in women who gave birth without being married. So those are two phases. I think non-marital births came a little bit after the divorce revolution, but now we have 4 in every 10 women in America have a baby without being married, with all the attendant issues and problems that come with that. So, it varies by ethnicity, but the bottom line is it's about 40%. The other thing that happened, which is really a negative, is that manufacturing moved abroad, getting rid of working class jobs. So now you can make it in China. It moved, I saw that when I was a little older. My father's business, everything moved to China, and then of course you laid off the working class people. So we have a thing called income inequality, which is not a good thing, escalates, particularly after 1980. So here we have the escalation of inequality, meaning that there are a lot of rich people, or I should say some rich people and a lot of not so rich people, and you really don't have as much of a middle class. U.S. has more income inequality than Western Europe because, of course, they have a more socialized way of taking care of their population, and it particularly affects young people. And that's going to bring me to the third phase that I'm going to talk about, which is starting in the early 20th century, really through today. And I'm going to call it the digital disconnection age of loneliness phase. But before that, we're going to talk about one of the basic issues, which is harder for young people to financially become adults. First of all, you're graduating with a large college debt that you have to pay off. But this major thing, the second thing that's really problematic is it's much harder to buy a home. Housing prices have escalated dramatically. So young people have a lot of trouble actually forming a family because they can't buy a home. And we still don't want to have them living with our parents in this day and age. So home buying is a big deal. Here's what's called the fading American dream. It looks like less than, this is 1984 now, it would be more, more pronounced. Less than 50% of all young people can actually make it to where their parents were relatively economically. They just want to live in the same country as their parents. They want a nice life. That's a lot of young people feel that way, and they feel it's slipping away. Adding to that, talking about all the problems, is we have a lot of different identity choices about gender identity in particular. Are we going to be gay? Are we going to be straight? Are we going to be bi? Are we going to be non-binary? By the way, non-binary just means that I don't define myself as either gay or straight. That's the theys. I'm non-binary. Notice that LGBT identification, that's gay, bisexual, transgender, all those things, which by the way is a small minority, identification by generations of US adults. And here in 2021, about 1 in 5 young people, this is Generation Z, this is the young people particularly, about 1 in 5 young people identified as one of those either gay, non-binary, lesbian, or one of those others. And there are all sorts of permutations that you're allowed to do now, and a significant percentage of young people have made that identification in this particular generation, Generation Z. And we're looking, even more broadly, we don't really see intimacy, or we don't see having a relationship as the only adult path. Now, here's another chart. I'm a big on charts. Percentage of the population, 25 to 50, who are without a partner. Used to be, in 1990, 1 in 3, maybe there's 4% here. Now it's basically, including people who are living together, by the way, it's really skating up to almost 1 in 2. And correspondingly few people are actually married. So being married is not the absolute be all and end all by far for what it used to be. And we accept all sorts of different paths. Accompanying that, we have a different idea about relationships. If you poll single young people, you find that most of them, this is from the Pew Research Center, and this is in 2022, most of them they are not looking for a relationship or even casual dates. A lot of people like being alone, and we have a priority. I'm alone. I can do exactly what I want. I love my freedom. But there's a famous song, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose, and that's what we're going to be talking about now. Your freedom comes at a price of a connection, which is very important. Okay, the result is that there's a huge increase in what psychologists term, this is academic, as a dismissive attachment style. Okay, this is some of the symptoms: brief relationships, fear of intimacy, inability to express feelings and emotions, high unrealistic standards of an ideal partner. That I think is a major problem. An extreme need, I just talked about, for autonomy and independence, secretive and unable to build trust or handle conflict. Okay? We're in the dismissive attachment era. And loneliness is the disease of our age, I should say of young people in particular. 79% of people between 18 and 24 said they were lonely. Only 41% of those over 65 turns out to be the least lonely stage of life. And the classic song here was Simon and Garfunkel's Sound of Silence. I am a rock. I am an island. I don't need anybody. I can't get hurt. That's the basic message of The Sound of Silence, which is a wonderful, wonderful song that they did when I was really a young adult, and it resonated with a lot of people then too. Okay, but I'm skating around the main cause. What is the main cause of of the loneliness? And I think many of us would agree that a major cause is the digital revolution. This is Jonathan Haidt and another person who is very important in our field talking about those issues. First, in the early 20th century, cell phones interfered with that basic human skill, having a real back and forth conversation. Here we have that human skill in operation. You're talking in a group. None of you looks at your cell phones. You're just sharing stuff, and you're just with each other emotionally. And then you have what's happening now, which not all of us can relate to. You're on your phone. If you're out with people, you start to go on your phone again because something else, some other important phone call happened, or you're just too nervous. I think a lot of this is nervousness. I don't have anything to say right now, so let me get on my phone immediately. So they're impairing the ability to tolerate that kind of stress when you're getting involved with somebody. And then we add to it social media. Now, I'm a big fan of meeting people on social media, which we do a lot all the time. We go on a specific site. For me, it would have been JDate, which I did go on, where you meet your own group of people. But the problem with social media is the limits are endless. So when you're on social media, there are so many people that you could possibly meet, huge. And that has its own problems. First of all, here's what I think is wrong with online love. First of all, and I went online to find a mate after my husband died, there's a priority on managing yourself and about how you, especially for people at my age, how you look. So you have to look pretty to be on, in your own way, to be on social media. You might lie about your age, you might fuzzy up your face, but the reality is you become a marketing object, and a lot of it is based on how you look and also how you present yourself. But I think just as important, there's a priority on quickly rejecting people who don't fit. Because after all, I can be with a million people, they're all out there. And the minute I get with somebody, I'm kind of looking to the side, just like when we go on social media. What else is going on in this world? Maybe I can be with somebody better. There's always going to be somebody better. We're looking for perfection. But in order to really fall in love or develop, in our clinical term, intimacy, you have to be together. It's a slow in-person dance, and that's called chemistry. And I love this because we're going to show chemistry in action here. When you get with the person, it's like you click. There's a sexual component to it. You talk, you joke. It's very, very exciting. And you have it with some people, and with other people, you won't have it. So then you decide that you're going to see them more often. I had a great time, and it was really turning my juices on, and now I'm going to get committed. In order to be committed, you also have to tolerate having disagreements with the person. So ups and downs are very, very important in having a relationship. You have to fight and you have to make up. That's what draws us closer. So here we have a couple, and they're not really talking. They're kind of angry at each other, and they're looking at each other. And all of a sudden she thinks to herself, hey, I really love him. How can I get it together? And all of us, and they're back together, and it's better than it was at the beginning. So in order to become committed, you really have to be with the person personally for a while, just like that. They love each other. And they found that out because they didn't reject each other at the first fight. So here's my answer, and it should be sort of a no-brainer. Resuscitate the time-honored way of finding a mate, getting to know people personally. That's the way we should do it, I think. We should try. We can do a little social media, but basically we need to connect with people in person. And how do you do that? Well, in my field, we have a lot of research. The way that you get chemistry with somebody is you share exciting interests that are common to you. So for instance, if I were interested in, which I am, in politics, I would want to do protests. It's very arousing. It's very exciting. It makes me feel like I'm bonding with the community, and it's a wonderful thing. Or I might be in a running group. I love athletics, and that's how I met my love of my life. We both do that together. Or even cards. I have a regular cards group, and we just really enjoy being with each other. So this is a little bit, I would say, off the beaten path. I also think it's very important to join a group that has to do with spirituality. Now, it could be a church, it could be a synagogue, but the idea that you're getting together with your own group of people and you're sharing rituals, that's very, very important. That is probably the most potent force for binding us to other people together. And of course, it's a classic way we always met a mate. This comes from Emil Durkheim, who was the founder of sociology. He said, religion puts us in a sacred space, and it is really one of the peak experiences of being human. So here we have, in my religion, we have the thing called the hora, which we dance at every wedding, and it is very, it's like it's in the bottom of our brain. It's very important. Or if you're a church, you obviously, those of you that go to church, it's very emotional. It's very arousing. It's very spiritual. You do that with a group of people, and then you get connected to the group, and out of it may come the one person that you end up being connected to. Okay, so that was what we should do as a society, but for the young people, I think I'm sounding like a grandma, guys, but I think I'm got some data that shows I'm right, because of course loneliness is a big problem today. I think we need to develop a more of a commitment attitude. So when we get together with somebody, I should say, you're young people, try to focus on what I like about this person, not what they did wrong. We have a bias in human nature and psychology to focus on the stuff that the other person did wrong. If we can shift it and focus on what we liked about being with this person, it's much better, because then you're more likely to say, I'll hang in to make this work. Now, you may say the next day or the next week, I'm not sure if I like this person, but the person calls you again. You say, well, let me keep giving it a try. Let's see how it goes, because it could be very different this time. And understand that a relationship, it just involves ups and downs. And you're really, old person talking, you're looking at the glass half full part of your relationship. What's good about this person? So they're talking, and she may not have liked a lot of stuff that he said, but she said, all right, I'm going to come and we're going to talk some more, and we're going to really get connected in that way. We have, everybody on the internet is talking about narcissism. Now, I'm here to tell you, yeah, there are some narcissists in the world, but we're all narcissists. And that is a rejective stance to take with a lot of people. It's not about us, it's not about them, it's about the two of us. And I think most of us, treated in the right way, will sort of be able to do that connective kind of thing, focusing on what you like about the person, not particularly the problems. Prioritize the entry to adulthood, not its later stages. Basically meaning, I think we definitely need a change in the housing market. We need to make housing more available to young people, I don't think people after they're married still want to be living with their parents. They can. We may change that attitude, but the bottom line is individual housing has been important in America, and I think our issue really is to make it more affordable. And of course, for people that go to college, we've got to make college, everybody agrees with that, more affordable too than it is. You're spending half your life paying off your college debt. That is not a good thing. Life. And in the next episode, we're going to move on to the getting older phase of life. And I'm going to tell you in simple terms what we psychologists know about the phase that I've been in for a while, which is the old phase of life. Older, we're calling it older. God forbid we should call it old. So I hope to see you in the next sessions of Belsky Being Human.